So I bet you've automated something recently, right? Maybe a simple zap, a little workflow to handle some annoying task. And when it works, it feels like magic. It's perfect. Until, well, it isn't. Until one tiny thing changes and the whole beautifully crafted system just breaks. And half the time, you don't even know it's broken until later. We've all been there. But here's the thing that's so interesting about that failure. It's usually not a bug, not something you can just go in and fix. It's actually a conceptual wall. It's the absolute limit of what that kind of old school automation was ever meant to do. Today, we're going to talk about what's on the other side of that wall. We're going to dive into this new paradigm called Agentic AI, which is not about making slightly better workflows. It's about giving systems the ability to think. So here's our game plan. We'll start with the automations we all know and love. Then we'll pinpoint exactly where and why it fails. After that, we'll get into Agentic AI, put the two side by side, and then this is the most important part. I'm going to give you a really simple 3-question framework so you know which tool to use and when. And we'll wrap up by looking at how they're going to work together. Okay, so before we can leap into the future, we have to get really clear on the present. Let's start with the kind of automation that we're all familiar with. Traditional automation is all about rules. It's that classic if this, then that logic. You map out everything in advance, a specific trigger, a rigid set of steps, and a predictable outcome, with tools like Zapier or Make. I love this analogy. You are the brain, figuring out the entire plan. The tool is just the muscle, executing that plan perfectly over and over again. And make no mistake, that is incredibly powerful. This method is predictable. You can always check what happened, and it's usually really fast to set up. For so many jobs like syncing your CRM contacts, sending a Slack alert when someone fills out a form, or running a weekly report, this is absolutely the right way to go. You don't need a sledgehammer to crack a nut, but it does have a breaking point. And as great as it is, there's a line it just can't cross. This is the moment where even the best designed workflows start to crumble. I call it the judgment gap. Let me tell you a quick story. So there's this e-commerce company, right? And they wanted to automate how they handle refund requests. Seems like a perfect automation task. So they built a really logical workflow. The rule was simple. If an email comes in and it has the word refund in it, bam, create a ticket in Zendesk for the right team. It's clean, it's simple, and at first, it worked like a charm. But then reality happens. An email comes in that says, hey, just to be clear, I don't want a refund. I'd just like to exchange this for a different size. The keyword refund is there, but the meaning, the intent, is the complete opposite. And this is the absolute key. The system didn't have a bug. It followed its rules perfectly. The problem is that it had zero judgment. And that judgment gap, that is something traditional automation just cannot get across on its own. So how do we get across that gap? Well, that's where Agent AI enters the picture. And it's really important to get this. This isn't just a smarter workflow. It is a fundamentally different way of solving the problem. An AI agent is basically a system that works in a constant loop. It looks at its environment, like it reads the whole email. It reasons about what it should do. It takes an action with a tool, and then it looks at the result to figure out its next move. And here is the single most important difference. With automation, you give it a fixed path. With an agent, you just give it a goal. So there are 4 key things that make an agent work. First, dynamic planning. It figures out what to do next as it goes. Second, tool use. It can decide on its own which tool it needs in the moment, whether that's searching a knowledge base or firing off an email. Third, memory. It remembers what happened in step 1 when it gets to step 5. And fourth, self-correction. If something doesn't work, it doesn't just stop. It tries to figure out why and find another way to reach the goal. Okay, so we've defined them both. Now let's put them side by side. This is really where the difference becomes crystal clear. Just look at this breakdown. For automation, the core instruction is a sequence of steps. For an agent, it's a goal. Automation is rigid, an agent is totally adaptive. The superpower of automation is executing a known process perfectly. The superpower of an agent is using judgment in an unknown process. And what happens when things go wrong? Automation just stops or throws an error. An agent tries to reason about the problem and fix it. All right, now for the part you can actually use. How do you choose between them? I'm going to give you a super simple 3-question framework. But first, to really see why this is a game changer, check out this quick example. There's this solo founder I know who is spending 12 hours every single week just manually researching sales leads. He built an AI agent to take over. Now that entire 12 hours of work takes him just 40 minutes. And the result of getting all that time back, he tripled his sales pipeline in 90 days. That's not just saving time, that is a massive force multiplier. Okay, so here's how you can figure out when you need that kind of power. Question 1. Can you sit down and map out every single possible step, every single exception right from the start? If the answer is yes, awesome. Stick with traditional automation. It's cheaper and more reliable for that. But if the path is unpredictable, you should really be looking at an agent. Question 2. Does the task require judgment? This takes us right back to that refund email story. Does it need to understand context? Does it need to handle strange, unexpected stuff without breaking? If the answer is yes, you're looking at that judgment gap, and you need an agent to get across it. And the final question, number 3. Does the system need to learn something halfway through the job and then change what it's doing based on that new information? A traditional workflow can't do that. Every run is exactly the same. An agent is literally designed to learn and adapt on the fly. If you need that, you need an agent. So this all brings us to the big picture. And it's really tempting to think, okay, agents are just going to replace all automation. But that's not the right way to look at this at all. The future isn't one or the other. It's hybrid. The best systems are going to use both. You'll have your super reliable, predictable workflows handling the simple stuff. And then you'll have an AI agent embedded inside, like a judgment node, that gets called on to handle the messy, ambiguous parts that used to need a person. So think of it this way. This isn't about replacement. It's about extension. We are extending what automation can do into territory that, until right now, was only for humans. And that's really the big takeaway here. Entire classes of work, things we always just assumed needed a person to make decisions, are now on the table to be automated. That barrier of judgment is starting to come down. So the only real question left is, what are you going to build?